Hello and welcome to the next installment of the Breaking Barriers series, where I'm having conversations with inspiring leaders and sharing stories, tips, strategies to help you in your step up to leadership because we need more women up there, and that's what we're all about. And today I've got the magnificent Sarah Joyce, and I will read her bio to you in a moment. Or paraphrase it. But I was thinking this morning about how we first met, and I had gone to Boston with my great friend Lisa Strutt. We'd gone to do a course at Harvard, and then we were coming to Boston to see Lean In Boston, and I think it was pretty much en route. We were asked, would one of us like to be on the panel? And so I was volunteered, and I rock up to this fantastic event in a beautiful building and meet the impressive Sarah Joyce and the other leading committee members. And I just remember being so in awe of them and thinking, oh crap, what am I going to add to this? So the imposter can hit at any time, even if you think you've got it all sorted out. Sometimes it can still sneak up on you. And we've been friends since. We've met up several times, and Sarah was over here this summer, so I think it's my turn to come back your way.
I think so. We're ready for you.
Welcome. So I'll just give you the official intro. So Sarah's the VP of Customer Success for LightForce, which is a digital platform providing orthodontists with fully customized 3D printed braces. Very cool. She's her roles have included Chief Customer Officer at two different healthcare organizations. As the CCO, she was responsible for implementation and services support and success for the organizations. And prior to those, she was the VP of Client Experience at Nant Health, which I think is where I was, and Navinet. And she's also held leadership roles in services operations, IT, and marketing at Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Rhode Island. And our paths crossed because Sarah was the founder of Lean In and president of Lean In Boston, a nonprofit organization that she started in 2015. So she was definitely ahead of the game to locally support and connect women. And she lives in the gorgeous Massachusetts with her husband and two amazing daughters. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
So we were just talking, I was saying that we love talking about the weather. So we were comparing temperatures. -3 here, but -16 with you. So
Yeah, that's our real field temperature today with wind, etc. So it's a little chilly out.
yeah, well, we've nothing really to complain about. So I'm excited to jump right in and hear about you and your story. So do you want to tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today and give us some of the show reel highlights and maybe not so highlights along the way?
Yeah, sure. So I can tell you kind of how it all started and a bit about where or how I got to where I am today. But you mentioned I live in Massachusetts. I was born in Boston several decades ago now and grew up about 20 minutes outside the city with my parents and my four sisters. I have three sisters, rather. I have three sisters very close in age. My oldest sister is about a year and a half older than me, and my youngest about 4 years younger. No brothers. We didn't have much, but we had enough. But my mom is definitely one of the reasons I am who I am. She did not feel like she had a lot of opportunity as a woman growing up in the 50s and 60s in Boston. And she wanted to make sure her daughters had a different story. So there's lots of lessons she taught us around making sure you could always take care of yourself, we're independent, really stress the importance of learning and education, which I attribute to being a lifelong learner to some of what she would tell us as kids. She always told us to establish ourselves and see the world and do all the things we wanted to do before raising a family. And we all pretty much listened to her. we all waited till 30 plus to get married. We talked about education. We all got our master's degrees. So we really took mom's advice. And we joke that, she raised feminists by accident with her 4 girls. Although my mom is certainly a feminist because she had no boys to do the work around the house. So we grew up doing all the things boys would do. And we were taught that girls could do anything boys could do, from mowing the lawn to raking the leaves to cleaning the bathrooms and all the things. And say I learned a lot about equality when I was young, but not necessarily equity. So for example, I had terrible environmental allergies. And when it was my turn to mow the lawn, I literally had an inhaler in my hand. But I had to do it because all my sisters were doing it and we split things fairly. I didn't really learn that much about bias and gender bias, and particularly because of the way I grew up in education. When I went to undergrad, I went to business school at Tulane in New Orleans, and it was, pretty evenly male versus female. So it wasn't really until I came out into the working world that I realized that things were not quite equal.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how did that show up then? When did you first go, hold on a minute, this is not what I was sold before?
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of the leaders, I started in consulting. And then, as you mentioned, I moved into healthcare insurance, working for a Blue Cross plan here. And a lot of the male leaders in the organizations that I worked in, or a lot of the leaders were male. And as I progressed in my own career, I found myself sitting around a table of mainly men a lot of the time. And the further up I went in leadership, the more I saw that, even at conferences and events, and of course, the people who were the CEOs and running companies. So the further I advanced in my career, the more prevalent I would see, male presence versus female.
So how did you start to deal with that then? Because obviously, I mean, I know you, and I know like you're ambitious, you're confident, you're determined. Those are the things I would say immediately when I look at you. So how did you start to deal with that when it wasn't quite what you were expecting?
Yeah, I would say I looked for others who were like me, really. And that was a lot of that was through different women's groups and things like that I became involved in. So even before I Lean In, I was always part of women's groups or volunteering for women's organizations. I sat on the board of the Women's Fund in Rhode Island for a while, part of women ERG groups and organizations, to make sure that what I was seeing, I could talk about that with others who might be experiencing something similar. And so that we could, have peers and colleagues who were experiencing similar circumstances, but also sounding boards for different issues and things that we were dealing with. So try to surround myself with people who were experiencing something similar.
So when, I mean, you were an early adopter of the whole Lean In approach of circles, and obviously you'd been part of groups before. So do you want to tell me about how you got started with Lean In and supporting other women?
Yeah, sure. So I was at one of the organizations I was at. We were users of Salesforce, the CRM solution, and we went out to their large conference, which is called Dreamforce, out in San Francisco. And Sheryl Sandberg was one of the keynote speakers. So I was familiar with Lean In. I had not read the book at the time, but I read it right after that because she did speak about the book and Lean In circles. And I was there with a lot of colleagues from that organization. And over dinner and maybe a glass of wine that night, my colleagues convinced me to start a Lean In circle at my organization. At the time, I was a director level, and I had very young children. So started that Lean In circle with other women who were at a similar point in their career, but they also had kids and they were trying to figure out this whole, like, how do I raise a family and work a job at the same time and try to, continue to evolve my career. We actually had a man in our group as well who contributed in a lot of amazing ways. I then helped create a couple more circles at that same organization of women, mainly women, but men were involved at different points in their career. And as we did that and started having conversations in those circles, we were wondering what others in Boston were doing and talking about. Like, we knew there were other lean-in circles in our community and wanted to figure out, how we could potentially connect with them or leverage them, or how they could leverage us. So I had started when the Lean-In Foundation had first started this idea around Lean-In. At the time, it was chapters. It's become networks and regional networks. I had connected online with some folks through their portal, and it got a lot of traction. A lot of people were connecting to this Boston chapter. And when Lean-In wanted to officially kind of pilot that concept, they invited me to their first conference, and I officially raised my hand to do that for Boston.
Brilliant. How exciting. And so, like, have you got any good, things that you're proud of that stand out for you from that work you've done, whether it's Lean-In or ERGs, women that you've helped step up? Because I know you're a big giver in and that's a big part of how you operate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot of stories of women who joined us in Lean-In Boston and pursued either other careers or other roles in their career, boosted by the Lean-In Boston network and the confidence they got attending some of our events, talking to others, etc. And sometimes, we had done many large events, some 300 plus attendees. So a lot of times when I had worked more often downtown in the city, I would run into people literally on the street. And I sadly didn't always remember everybody because they were large events. We had them every month, but people who would tell me a story about how much value they were getting out of Lean-In. And that was super meaningful to me and the whole reason for doing it all in the first place.
Wow, that's so cool. So, I mean, obviously you stepped up to quite a senior role quite quickly, and you've worked in bigger corporates and more of a startup environment. So what are some of the challenges you've had or things you've noticed from that?
Yeah, I mean, the corporate environment is much different than startup environment. One of the reasons I made the leap over from corporate to more healthcare technology and then to more of the startup space is I got really good at navigating like corporate America and politics and all of that, and realized that I did not want to spend that much time doing that. So I'd rather be spending my time in other ways. So startup world is really exciting. Helping build companies and helping to define how to make them successful is it's a lot of fun. It's really, really hard, but it's a lot of fun. I've had a lot of challenges. I'd say, like, some of the ones as you advance your career, here and there, I've probably struggled with some confidence, imposter syndrome type stuff. I wouldn't say that's been super prevalent for me. I attribute some of that back to I'm the second of my three sisters of the four of us. And my older sister and I did all the same things. So I'm like super competitive. I have what I call second child syndrome because I was always trying to do what she did because she was in all the smart classes and all the things. So some of that's my personality, but I've definitely had some challenges with, I'd say vulnerability is a big one for me. Like when I'm going through something big, either a work crisis or a health issue or whatever it might be, I prefer to do it alone while I'm in it. And I've been working on that. But when I'm through it and I've somewhat processed what happened, then I'll talk about it and share openly and share my experience and try to help others and all those things. And where this has really impacted me career-wise, at one time with a former boss who I really trusted, like really trusted, would have considered a friend even. I was more open and vulnerable about a difficult family situation that I was going through. And it kind of backfired on me. At first, I think he felt like he was trying to protect me or not add to my plate of, additional things at work. But it ended up causing some issues for me. And I ended up leaving the organization. And I still, believe in that power of vulnerability, both in our personal lives and professional lives, especially to be authentic leaders and to lead teams. But it took me some time to recover from that. And I have to be really thoughtful about that in my own career, because it is not something I'm naturally good at.
Okay, and then getting burnt like that, I'm sure, made you recoil a little bit more.
For sure.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. But it is so important in connecting. You mentioned authentic leadership, just being the real you. And yeah, I see it in coaching as well, because I originally trained in coaching with somebody that felt very too perfect and polished and very distant. And it was good for me to actually recognize very quickly that as a coach, I think you need to be vulnerable and accessible, because otherwise you're teaching somebody maybe to strive for something that's not real.
Hmm.
So yeah, and of
Totally.
course I see it with the women I work with. We work a lot on that whole mindset of managing your vulnerability, because it is hard in the moment to do it. You kind of There's only certain people you can let in at that
Yeah.
point, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
agree. I agree with that. I would say earlier in my career, I mean, I was definitely more of a perfectionist and really separated work from the rest of my life, which is just not possible. Like as
Mm,
we, as we get older and more experienced and have different types of roles and have partners and friends and parents we take care of and kids we take care of, like you can't separate that stuff. It's just part of
mm,
us, right? So bringing that and what's going on, with that in some capacity to the workplace is like it just should be more of a natural thing. But it's hard. It's hard for some people.
yeah. And I know, because family is huge for you. Like
Yes.
uh, Sarah's family events are she has what every week what we would probably have like every 10 years. They're
Yeah,
amazing.
I do,
Um,
and we had 60 people at my house for Christmas. My mom and her aunt still do all of the my aunts still do all of the, catering, cooking, and stuff like that. I just was sort of hosting, but my husband years ago had said, "I really wanna wake up with our girls on Christmas and just stay home all day," and I was like, "That's fine. I will just bring my family to us." And that is what we do.
I love that. Yeah, so Rob's just had to get used to
Yes, for
the
sure.
ways. I love it. And so how do you think that, because you're close to so much of your family and that connection, like that's a huge network in itself. How do
Yes.
you think that's helped you with where you've got to, and help you navigate work and family and all of those things?
Yeah. I mean, because I've been blessed with a large close-knit family, and my one of my cousins and I were just talking about this the other day. When we were kids, the school year ended and we didn't see our friends again until the school year started, because we were with our cousins all summer long. And it was usually like
Mhm.
camping and we would go to the beach and stuff like that. So we always had, our built-in friends as our cousins. And because of that, someone's always had my back. Like I obviously have friends. I have very close friends, and I like to be friendly with folks at work. But I haven't been overly focused around that, because I've had it. I was born into that, right? And my
Mhm.
family, both sides, my father's side and my mother's side, and Rob's side, my husband's, they're all in the Boston area, which is where we still are. So I have that built-in network, um, and it's helped me more about how I think about connecting to others. Like I don't overly focus on making sure people like me, even though I do want people to like me, because I have enough people who I love who I don't even get to see on a regular basis. So I think it's helped me more from that aspect as opposed to, no one in my family has actually helped me get a job, but I think they've helped me develop who I am. And that's not true. I interned with my dad when I was young. So I take that back. And my mother as a teenager, I take that back as well. But it's helped me more with how I think about connection and relationships, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, because I was just thinking the other thing about that, because I do come from a very big family as well, and in fact, cousins and whatever are so important. It means because you're not necessarily choosing the people that you spend time with, you do become. I don't know if you find this, you become a master at navigating different
Yeah.
relationships because you
Mm-hmm.
you have to get
Mm-hmm.
on, you know, to support the family dynamic. So
Totally. It's sort of like a crash course into like situational leadership because you have to change, like dependent on situation and people involved in that larger group. You have to change your style if you want to effectively manage through it. So,
hmm.
yeah.
And what about the people then that you go to when you do have something, a challenge or something big that you want to work through, or an opportunity that you want help with? Like, how have you navigated that in your career?
Yeah. Great question. I mean, I have a lot of individuals who I would consider um, mentors in certain spaces. Like there's a woman who I've worked with for a long time now, and she has two girls that are older than my daughters. So anytime I'm dealing with work childcare stuff or even just stuff with my kids, she is my number one sounding board. She's lived through it, just a few years ahead of me. Her experience is really relevant to help me think about, how I might approach something. And and if I'm dealing with some leadership challenges or stuff I'm working through on the executive team that I'm on, like there are other female execs that I've worked with and have relationships with, um, who I would use as a sounding board. So I get really good at how to think about using people in my network and friends, in addition to cousins and sisters and family, to fit different needs or help solve problems in different areas that I have in my life. So kind of thinking about how you use your network to help yourself just sort of applies to how I think about using and my friends, family, colleagues, etc. for help.
Yeah, without a doubt. So, like one of the things that came up in the last interview I did, that I think is a really interesting thing to explore, is how you see success and how that's maybe evolved from, you know, being in school, leaving college, through to today. Like, have you seen a change in that, a shift in your thinking?
Yeah, for sure. I think earlier in my career, success was about having a good job and making a good salary and all of those sort of traditional and somewhat simple views into what success is. And as I've evolved in my career and just as a human being, I think success, like happiness, is really defined by whatever's meaningful to you personally. And for me, when I think about when I feel most successful, it's about feeling like I'm in a position to add value to something, an organization, a team, etc. And I also feel valued. So I feel like that goes both ways. So I feel like I'm contributing and adding value and helping someone succeed, but I also feel recognized for that as well. And my
Mm,
contribution. You mentioned I like to help others. I've like my whole life, I've enjoyed helping others solve problems, whether it's family members or big issues at work. And success to me is also being a good role model for others in the community and my organization. When I'm working with women in general, my own family. So I would define it more that way these days.
yeah, yeah. And we'll come back to that in a second. But you mentioned something there about it being a two-way street of adding value and wanting to feel valued. So I'm interested in what you do when you don't feel valued.
Yeah.
How have you dealt with that?
Uh-huh. I have a conversation about it, and that sounds easier said than done. But I make sure that I clearly understand the direction, for example, an organization is trying to get to. So stay really aligned to strategy and goals, etc., and think about how I can use my strengths and expertise to help achieve some of those things. And I'd say that's how I really did advance in my career is staying close to goals and objectives, thinking about how I could help there, and raising my hand to take on more things or different things to help achieve those. But when I'm not feeling valued, and I do this much better now than I did earlier in my career, I speak up. So
Mm.
I will say, like, I don't, I don't feel like I'm adding value in the right way. I'd like to do this instead, or, I feel like I'm focusing on the right stuff, and I don't feel like I'm being valued for these contributions. So, like, how can we do something different there?
Mm. Okay. And so you're giving them an opportunity to fix it, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's so important because I think it's really easy to I see a pattern of behavior where we get frustrated in a job we're in, and we think we're not being recognized, not being paid attention to, and so that's the point where people often go and look for another job
Mm-hmm.
before you've
Yeah.
had the conversations. Let them fix it, and if they don't
Yeah.
fix it and if they're not interested, then you definitely know you need to get another job.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And I've had that conversation before, that did not go as I would have wanted it to, and I did end up looking for another opportunity. But a lot of times, I have the conversation and we work through it, and things work out.
Yeah.
But I do
Well,
see, I've had a few times I've seen, especially women who have worked for me, when I've told them about something, a change in the organization, something that's going to impact them, and they don't feel, recognize. I can see it. I can see it on their face, and I can see them shut down, and I can't
mm,
force someone to have that conversation. And I'll check
mm.
back in and try to have it, but sometimes people aren't willing to have the conversation for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the things I've seen is how personally sometimes we can take things, and you've talked about really stepping back and looking at, well, what's the direction of the business? How can I add value to the goals and aims of the organization? And that's the key. And sometimes things will change and you're not in the right place anymore. But yeah, it's all about having good conversations,
Yeah,
definitely.
agreed.
Um, so I said I'd come back to your how you love to help others, and I know something you're really passionate about is working with younger women and girls. So tell us a bit um, about where. Well, first of all, how do you make the time to do it, and what are you, what sort of things are you doing, and what do you love about that?
Yeah. So my girls now are 11 and 13. They're in middle school here in Massachusetts, which is a lot of fun. But when they were younger, I I volunteered to help coach soccer. I volunteered to run one of their Girl Scout troops and help run the other troop, because I am really passionate about developing leadership skills in girls. I loved running Girl Scout troops and seeing, these future leaders and CEOs and girls who are going to do amazing things. My kids, very sadly, this year both decided to do other activities, but I've spent about 6 or 7 years running Girl Scout troops. Um, I get a lot of joy out of that. I think I can add a lot of value to those conversations with young girls, and lots of things that I've learned over the years. I do a lot of things differently with my kids than how I was raised, to help them think about leadership earlier and more broadly and things like that. So I am, I was going to do it in a more formal way, but I think I'm just going to do it with my girls' friends. Going to run the Lean In Girls curriculum with a group, and see how well that goes, and if I want to do more there, because I am really passionate about developing girls in early leadership. So
Yeah.
we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. So for those of you not familiar with it, Lean In Girls is a new program that was developed by Lean In, and it's really holistic. There's so many elements to it that you can pick up from the website and take and use to support a group of girls to build their leadership skills, their focus, their confidence, and it's also about building an early network,
Yes.
helping them see that friendships can be more. They can how much you can really help each other, which I think is an important lesson that girls need to learn from an early
Yes.
age. Yeah.
Completely agree.
Fantastic. So are your girls all up for this then?
They are. So when I wanted to do a broader group, they were a little hesitant. Like, they were worried some of the other girls wouldn't be into it as much. So we agreed together to keep it to a smaller group, and I allowed that. They're in back-to-back grades, so running it for one group for both of my girls, and they're bringing in 2 friends each, who they feel like,
Comfortable.
like
Yeah.
it's safe enough to involve these girls. They won't think it's uncool or anything like that. And I think they'll really enjoy it.
Yeah.
So I will
That's
let you know how it
brilliant.
goes.
Yeah, it's funny because no matter how cool we think we are, they have
Yeah,
a whole different
totally
perspective,
different.
don't they?
Mhm.
Oh, amazing. So I'm really interested to dig into, like, you have for anybody looking in, and this is how I saw you, you're successful, polished, confident. Like, what of I know you've said vulnerability has been a challenge, but like there been any steps along the way where you've struggled about where do I go next in my direction? I feel like I'm getting nowhere here. Like, any moments like that in your career that you could give us a bit of insight into how Sarah's navigated and maneuvered her way.
Yeah. It's a great question. I mean, earlier in my career, when I was at Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Rhode Island, I was in a lot of different roles there. And for a time, I had helped them set up in consulting a technology solution in their services organization, and then joined to help run part of that team, which was definitely my comfort zone at the time and what I thought I was good at. But learning more about the general kind of way that the company runs and seeing opportunities elsewhere and raising my hand for those opportunities helped me move into different positions outside of that, like customer services type side of the org, into I was all over. I ran their web stuff for a while in the IT organization. I ran their patient engagement strategy stuff under marketing, their retail strategy under marketing for a while. So I had been in operations and IT and services, and I really attribute my time spent there as helping me learn to be a really good general leader, because I got to understand different aspects of the organization. And I mean, I attribute a lot of my success today into having those general leadership skills and learning about how a company is run from lots of different aspects, for sure. But I've always enjoyed the customer side of orgs and staying close to the customer, which is how I continued to develop in as a chief customer officer, and I run customer success for my current
Yeah.
organization. But I do, when I think back and what really propelled my career, a lot of it was bouncing. My colleagues used to say I was the director of everything at Blue Cross, because I did bounce around to lots of different areas, but I learned a lot and how to work
Yeah.
with different types of teams. And I think it was a really good foundation for me.
That's brilliant because I think often we're fed a story of having to become a specialist to be
Mhm.
successful. And that's really important to hear that actually it's that general experience and that's given you such a good grounding in business. And I love that director of everything. Who doesn't want to be director of
Yeah, right.
Okay, so diversify, learn as much as possible. And I'm guessing not every move was upwards. So you probably took a few
That's
side
correct. Yep.
steps. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
not to
So
be
our,
afraid.
our career path doesn't need to be a ladder, it can be a jungle gym. So going sideways to learn and help advance you in a different way is equally as important for
Yeah,
career development. Yeah.
yeah. It's funny because when I first started in corporate, that's what I saw. You saw the high potentials that have been identified in the organization. I was just in the door as a graduate, and I remember watching, and it was usually men, of course, and how they really diversified their careers. And I got that message very early on, but actually, it's one I've had to unpick time and time again with women that actually, sometimes you're doing yourself. There's of course times when it's really important to become a specialist, but sometimes it is about stepping back. Well, we're nearly at the end of our time, so I'd just love to hear any last sort of what you obviously mentor a lot of women, you work in a lot of you've worked with a lot of ERGs, you've set up Lean In. What are some of the tips and advice and strategies that you find you've given out a lot and that you recognize
Yeah.
has been really important?
Yeah. Um, so one is that if you, I believe, if you surround yourself with the right people, you can do anything. And that applies to my personal life and work life and
Mhm.
life in general. Personally, when I first had kids, Rob and I moved intentionally closer to our mothers, who helped raise my kids, my mother and my mother-in-law, and knowing that my kids were cared for and loved by people who loved them just as much as I did, helped me be more successful in being able to do things at work. But being part of the right team, building the right team with the right people with diverse experience and thoughts and complementary skills allows you to do more faster, be happier doing it. So power of team is a super important one. And then something else, and I learned it was an HR leader told me at an org that I was actually leaving. But one thing I do with people that I work with and respect, if I'm leaving a job or a position to go do something else, I'll check in and ask them about, like, as I form a new team or join a new team, like, what are some strengths I have that they've seen, and also what are some things that they think that I should tell new people who meet me for the first time. But
Oh,
one of
I
the
love
things,
that.
yeah, yeah, and I've gotten lots of different answers over the years.
Oh,
Um,
give us some.
what's that?
Tell us a few
Oh,
things you
well,
could
one
tell.
that this HR leader told me, it was the first time I heard this, and it really hit me. But she said, "Don't underestimate your own power." And she was saying this specifically about me and about my personality and like her perception of what sort of power I have. But I think it really applies to everybody, right?
Mhm.
So don't underestimate your own power. You've got a lot of power as an individual. Make sure you're using that in the right way and to your advantage. And it's something that I remind myself of often when I start anything new. Um,
Wow, that
yeah,
is such a valuable piece of feedback, isn't it?
it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Own
And
your power
yes,
and use it for good.
use it for good. Only
Yeah.
only on the side of the good. Yeah. And I think the other big thing, that I'd say, and I also try to remember this one myself, don't be too hard on yourself. Sometimes good enough is good enough. Yeah, I was a perfectionist earlier on in my career for sure. But you can't navigate all the things in life perfectly at the exact same time. It's just not possible. And there are very few moments when I can take a step back and say, you know, right now, everything in my job is wonderful, and my spouse is wonderful, and my kids are fantastic, and I'm in the best health and exercising every day and spending enough time with my friends. And it doesn't ever happen that all of those things are super positive at the same time. You know, one day it could be smooth with the kids, work might be okay, and I saw my husband for 30 seconds because we were, you know, had conflicting schedules. And another day, kids might be off. Rob and I get to go to dinner, and work is terrible. Like it's just every day, every week is something different, and that's okay. You know, when I feel the worst is when everything is going badly at the same time, which also hardly ever happens. So, you know, recognize life is hard. It's unpredictable. It's also wonderful and beautiful and fun. And if any of it is going well at one time, you're doing a great job.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It reminds me of a football manager actually said that that's one of the things they really try and instill in the players is that life is hard. Like
Yeah.
nobody's coming to make it all nice and easy for you. It is about, you know, recognizing that I'm growing with it and rolling with it and not putting yourself under too much stress and pressure to be. Yeah, I love that. Not, don't be perfect at everything. It's not possible. Perfection's an illusion.
Totally.
So yeah. And I always like to think that people hate perfection anyway. So
Yes.
it's good to have a few flaws to make you make them like
Yes.
you. Oh, well, thank you so much for your time today, Sarah. It's been an absolute joy to have you and great to see you as always. And
Great to see you
I
too.
can't wait. I'm sure lots of people will watch this and get a lot of use out of it. And